We all know plants are amazing because they make their own food using sunlight, right? Photosynthesis. But that's only half the story. How do they actually use that food to live? Well, today, we're going to follow the incredible story of how a plant, just like you and me, breaks down its food to get the energy it needs to grow, to repair itself, and basically to do everything it does.
So let's start with a question that seems super simple, but the answer is actually pretty cool. Do plants breathe? I mean, they don't have lungs, they don't have a nose, so what's the deal? How does that work? This is the central mystery we're going to unravel.
And to make this whole complex process easy to follow, we're going to tell it like a story. And every good story needs a hero. Our hero is a single molecule of glucose, fresh from the photosynthesis factory. It's packed with energy, and it's about to go on an epic quest to release it.
So first things first, why even bother? Why do plants, or any living thing for that matter, need to do this? The answer, in one word, is energy. Absolutely every single thing a plant does, from sucking up water through its roots to unfurling a new leaf, costs energy. Respiration is just the process of cashing in the food check to get that energy.
The official name for this is cellular respiration, and it really only has one ultimate goal: to create something called ATP. Now, you should think of ATP as the energy currency of the cell. It's like the dollar or the euro of the biological world. The entire point of breaking down our glucose hero is to turn its stored value into these spendable ATP coins.
Okay, so back to our big question. How do they do it without lungs? Well, plants have this incredibly clever, decentralized system. Instead of one big breathing apparatus, each part, the leaves, the stem, the roots, kind of takes care of its own business. They have these tiny little pores called stomata on leaves and lenticels on stems that let gases in and out. And these openings are connected to a whole network of air spaces, making sure every single living cell can get the oxygen it needs for respiration. It's super efficient.
All right, our glucose hero's journey is about to begin. The first stage is called glycolysis. Now, this all happens right in the main fluid-filled part of the cell, the cytoplasm. And here's a really important detail to remember. This first step doesn't need any oxygen at all.
The name, glycolysis, literally gives the game away. It comes from the Greek words glykos for sugar and lysis for splitting. So it's sugar splitting. And that's exactly what happens. What's amazing is that this exact process is found in nearly every living thing on our planet, from the tiniest bacterium to the giant sequoia tree. It's ancient and it's universal.
So, how does this sugar splitting actually go down? You can think of it in three simple phases. First, you know the saying, you have to spend money to make money? The cell does just that. It invests 2 of its ATP coins to get the glucose molecule ready. Then comes the main event, the split. Our 6-carbon hero gets chopped clean in half, creating 2 3-carbon molecules. And finally, the payoff. The cell gets its investment back and then some. It harvests a total of 4 ATPs for a net gain of 2.
Okay, now this diagram looks pretty intimidating. I know. It maps out all 10 chemical reactions. But don't get bogged down in the details. The big picture is exactly what we just talked about. You put a little energy in, you split the molecule, and you get a little bit of energy out. And the most important thing to remember is the end product. Our 1 glucose molecule has now become 2 smaller molecules called pyruvate, or sometimes you'll see it called pyruvic acid. Same thing.
And this is where our story reaches a huge turning point. Our 2 little pyruvate molecules, the remains of our glucose hero, have arrived at a fork in the road. And the path they take next depends entirely on one single factor. Is there oxygen around or not?
And boy, does that one factor make a world of difference. If there's no oxygen, that's the anaerobic path. The breakdown is really incomplete. It all just stays in the cytoplasm, and you get a pathetic amount of energy out, just those 2 ATPs we already made. Plus, you're left with byproducts like alcohol. But if there is oxygen, the aerobic path, everything changes. The process moves into a specialized part of the cell, the mitochondria, for a complete and total breakdown, releasing a massive amount of energy.
Yeah, and this quote really drives that point home. Fermentation, which is the anaerobic path, is just wildly inefficient. You leave more than 93% of the potential energy on the table. And worse, it creates stuff that can actually be toxic to the cell. So you can see why, for any complex organism, taking that aerobic path with oxygen isn't just a preference, it's pretty much essential for life.
So let's assume our pyruvate molecules made the smart choice and oxygen is available. They now get an all-access pass to the cell's power plants, the mitochondria. In here, they're going to enter the second major stage of our hero's journey, the Krebs cycle.
But hang on, you can't just waltz into the Krebs cycle. There's a quick prep step. Each of our pyruvate molecules gets converted into a different 2-carbon molecule called acetyl-CoA. This little transition is super important. It's the bridge connecting glycolysis to the Krebs cycle. And this is also where we see the very first molecule of carbon dioxide get released.
So here it is, the cycle itself. Think of it like a Ferris wheel. Acetyl-CoA hops on, goes for a ride through 8 different steps, and gets systematically dismantled. Now look closely. The main point here is not to make a bunch of ATP directly. You only get one little ATP per turn. The real prize, the whole reason for the cycle, is to load up a bunch of these special energy-carrying molecules called NADH and FADH2. Think of them as rechargeable batteries or little energy shuttle buses, getting all charged up for the final stage.
And that brings us to the grand finale, the main event. All of those fully charged energy shuttles we just made, all that NADH and FADH2, are now headed to the inner membrane of the mitochondria to finally cash in their energy. This is where the big payoff happens. Probably the best way to picture what happens next is to imagine a hydroelectric dam. Our NADH and FADH2 molecules arrive and drop off their high-energy electrons at the top of this chain of proteins. As the electrons get passed down the chain, kind of like a bucket brigade, they release little bursts of energy. And that energy is used to pump protons across the membrane, building up a huge reservoir, just like water behind a dam. And who's waiting at the very bottom of the chain to scoop up the spent electrons? Oxygen. This is its crucial #1 job. Without oxygen to clear the way, the whole system would grind to a halt. Okay, now for the magic. All those protons we pumped out are now desperate to flow back in, down their concentration gradient. But there's only one way they're allowed to go, through an amazing little molecular machine called ATP synthase. As the protons rush through, they spin this thing like water spinning a turbine. And that spinning mechanical energy is used to literally jam a phosphate group onto a molecule of ADP, making ATP. And it does this over and over and over again, generating a massive amount of energy.
So, when all is said and done, what's the grand total? The complete and total breakdown of our single, solitary glucose hero can generate up to 38 molecules of ATP. 38! Now compare that to the measly 2 you get from fermentation. It's an incredible display of biological efficiency. It's just no contest.
But wait, just when you think the story's over, there is one last absolutely brilliant twist. It turns out this whole pathway we've been following, it's not just for destruction, it's not just for breaking things down, it actually has a secret double life.
Biologists have a fantastic name for this. It's called an amphibolic pathway. Amphi just means both, like an amphibian. This means the respiratory pathway is involved in both catabolism, that's the breaking down part we've been talking about, and anabolism, which is the building up part.
This is where you see how beautifully interconnected everything is. It's like a metabolic highway with exits all along the way. If the cell needs to make some fatty acids, it can just pull some acetyl-CoA right out of the pathway before it enters the Krebs cycle. If it needs to build some proteins, no problem. It can siphon off intermediates from the Krebs cycle to use as building blocks for amino acids. It means that the cell's primary engine is also its primary workshop.
And that really brings us to a final, pretty profound thought. The journey of our glucose molecule wasn't just a one-way street to demolition. It was a tour through the absolute central hub of the cell's entire economy. So, if life's main engine for getting energy is also its main workshop for building new things, what does that really teach us about the deep, mind-boggling efficiency that's woven into the very fabric of nature?